All right, well, if y'all are ready, then I'm ready. Welcome to Course Accessibility, and I added UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning. I went to a conference with Scott back there. He's our instructional designer as part of the faculty instructional technology team. But we went to a conference and it talked about what is universal design for learning and how does it fit into the overall universal design goal. I apologize, there was a little bit of a mix-up with the times. It was scheduled originally for 10:30. I think it got bumped forward to 10:15. So there was an email that went out saying it started at 10:30. So we may get some people wandering in at 10:30 and wondering why it started early. But the good thing is that it's being recorded. And so if you feel like you missed something, we should be able to get you that recording to go back over whatever you feel like you missed. All right, so accessibility, UDL. When I started in this field, I don't know that I knew the difference between what is when something's accessible and then what is it when it's designed universally. Isn't that the same thing? If it's designed universally, then it's accessible to all people? And I'd say maybe. To me, the overall umbrella is universal design, and that even goes to like building design. When we design a building, we add ramps, we add elevators if necessary, we add any kind of access mechanism that we know that people are going to need. We don't build a building and then wait for somebody to need something, to need a ramp instead of the stairs, and then we're like, okay, we'll go ahead and build that ramp. No, we know that buildings need ramps, so we're going to put them on. Just like the instructional materials we're going to talk about today, if we know that they need heading structure, they need alternate text for images, if we know that documents and web pages are going to need those things, we add them in on the design side so that when we get to class time, there's not a student that says, hey, I really can't understand those images. I can't see them very well. And then you're scrambling and thinking, I need to talk to Bill because I don't remember what he said about what do I do to images. No, you take what you know and you apply it as best you can. There's also a hands-on workshop that is held 2 Mondays from now, I believe. It's right before Thanksgiving. I was hoping to hold this workshop and that workshop at the same times, but if I hold it, I don't know. I can't hold it on Thanksgiving. That's my point. So I had to move it to...
Or you be by yourself.
Yes. I had to move it to that Monday before. All right, so now let's get into it. What is accessibility? If universal design for learning is different from accessibility, then what is accessibility? To me, it boils down to access. We have to give students, all students that come to campus or all students that learn online with us, we have to give them access to instructional materials. If we're not doing that, we're not doing our jobs. It's also federal law that students with disabilities have to receive equal access, and so that's why you're here. We also need to be sensitive. When I say that, it's not emotional sensitivity. It's not you feeling bad for anybody. It's being sensitive to the needs that people have. And so when you get an idea of, okay, if somebody has a vision impairment, they probably need these things. If somebody has a hearing impairment, motor impairment, whatever, they probably need these things. That's just you becoming sensitive to the differences between people and then becoming knowledgeable about what helps people with disabilities. And that's included in accessibility. So it's also inclusivity. What are the known barriers? And I've already talked about if we know that people are going to need a ramp, if we know that automatic doors like on the front of the library help everybody, then we're just going to add them in the design stage so that it's accessible when it comes to being used. Digital access, I feel like this is a great milestone in human history because before we had digital access, it was pretty much paper, word of mouth. And so paper was great, but if you can't see the paper does you no good. Or if you have a learning disability, the paper might not do you any good. And so digital access has created some leaps over those barriers. So that's why I feel like digital access is great. It's also why I have a job, so I love it. I mentioned right here, in terms of digital access, when you want to add that inclusivity for your courses, which goes back to, I want to add accessibility to my courses, the FITCI website is a good reference. So I'm going to show you. This is just mtsu.edu/FITC, Faculty Instructional Technology Center. And these are all the resources that we've put together for anybody on campus to have as a reference. And one of the projects that I worked on over the summer was the first link on this website, accessibility. I don't know if that's, no, I guess it's not alphabetical order, but I like that it's at the top. All right, accessibility. I understand that accessibility in general can be overwhelming. Sometimes it overwhelms me, and it's my job every day. Just because there are so many different avenues and forms that accessibility can take, because there's a huge variety of people, and the way that people access things can be different. But the nice thing about accessibility is that there are some really common forms of accessibility. I already mentioned heading structure in documents and web pages, alternative text for images, some really common practices, and that's what this website is laid out to show you. When I'm creating D2L pages or web pages, go here. When you're creating Word documents, PowerPoint, Excel, PDF, what else is there? Math, video, audio, complex graphics. Those are some places that you can dig into. Let's say we're creating PowerPoint documents. I worked on one for this presentation. I might have even used my own reference. So it says, just the main areas, how to start with accessibility in mind. That gets into when you're just laying out your slideshow, what do you need to be thinking about in terms of accessibility? Slide layouts is kind of the same. There's an accessibility checker built into PowerPoint, also in Word, also in Excel. It's something that Microsoft Office products have, and it's really nice. I wouldn't say that it's comprehensive. Something I read, I think it was this week, it said that automatic checkers like these catch about 25% of the overall accessibility problems. So they're a good starting place, but they're not going to get you to what we would call fully accessible documents. And when I say fully accessible documents, I mean as accessible as we know the barriers. Whatever the known barriers are, we address them as best we can. There are going to be some outliers where people need accommodations that are different, but what I'm talking about is just as best we can do, best practice. The third one is the long one, and it gets into when I'm putting a list into a presentation, when I'm putting links into a presentation, what about tables? What about colors of the presentation? Blinking content, interactive elements, math and science, the reading order of the slides, video and audio in your slideshow. So it tries to break down all the different types of things you can add to a slideshow. And when you're adding one of these things, let's look at tables. I have a data table. These are the steps. It even breaks it down to step 1, step 2, step 3. How do I make tables accessible in my slideshow? And so I encourage you to use this resource. If you, like I said, it can be overwhelming. If you feel overwhelmed, even with this resource, that's when you contact me or somebody in my department, and we will just walk you through it. That's my job, to walk people through the accessibility process. All right, so we've talked about digital access. Inclusivity also includes flexibility in your courses. And so if you have a rigid structure for your tests. You probably already know that if you have a student with a disability, that it's part of their accommodation plan as part of the Disability and Access Center. They're registered with DAC, and then DAC issues you a letter that says this student would benefit from. It's almost to the point of this student needs, but that accommodation letter is a process where you receive a letter that says this student needs extra time on tests. They need a separate testing environment. That's that flexibility that I'm talking about. You almost have to, by federal law, be flexible for students with disabilities. Yes?
Are you going to take questions from Dan, or can I interrupt you?
You can go ahead.
Okay. So I've wondered this about, because I've encountered this in classes.
Yeah.
If I want to give a pop quiz over a reading, because a threat of a quiz is the only way you can get students to read.
Yeah.
How do I accommodate students who need extra time without sending them out in the hall and having them then miss part of class?
That's a great question. I
The
remember.
rest of the class benefits from having that carrot and stick approach.
Yep. My previous job was with Disability and Access Center on campus, and I remember that coming up. I don't remember the answer, but I would encourage you just to talk with them, because they'd be the people that would
have the answer.
Yeah, they'd have the answer about how best to approach that. Any other questions about what is accessibility? Okay. Then, what is universal design for learning? Because I talked about universal design is the umbrella. We want to design things universally for buildings, for documents, for everything. So what is universal design for learning? And I feel like it can be boiled down to +1 thinking. What else can I do to make my course more diverse? And this is another thing that can become overwhelming, because you're thinking, do I need to make multiple formats for every little thing in my course? The answer to that is no. So right here, I say that universal design, it also equals access. You're creating a wider accessibility stance for your course. So picture the sticking points in your courses. Go ahead and take like 10 seconds and think about what is one part of my one course where students almost always come to me and they say, I don't really know what to do here. Can you explain it a little bit differently? Anybody? Do you have a point in your course that's probably like the most difficult assignment? Yeah. So in terms of that assignment, that's the light that I want you to think about these 3 things. How can you diversify the learner engagement? Can you have them work in small groups to better understand the initial topic? Can you represent the info in a variety of ways? Can you make a video of you doing the process, almost like a walkthrough? Like you would go online and look for a walkthrough on YouTube of how to repair your garage door. You make a version of that for the activity that you want them to do, because you know that when you teach, you have to model. And the best way to model these days is to make a video. That's why YouTube is one of the most popular places online. Can you give them multiple action choices? On another slide, I'm going to get into when you have an assignment or a test, whatever kind of formative, summative assessment, is it the format that you're interested in, or is it the knowledge that you're interested? Because if you're interested in the format, there are not a lot of options, because you have to have them do it this one way to show that they know that format, because the format is the point. But then a lot of other times, the knowledge is the point. So if the knowledge is the point, can you have them record a podcast showing that they know what they're talking about? Can you have them make a slideshow, write a document? There are just so many ways of representing knowledge these days. So allowing that flexibility goes back to access. And then I'll read this quote. We want a situation that's good for everybody. Yeah, universal. Part of it is thinking about what has to happen at the level of design that makes accommodation less necessary. So I've already mentioned in this presentation the design process. That's really where you want to think about accessibility, universal design for learning, just access in general. Am I creating this document, webpage, whatever, for the widest audience that I know how to do? All right, so practical. Really, what can you do after you leave here? What's feasible? It's very feasible for you to ask for help. I told you that's my job. The things that I'm outlining today, it's my job to help you, or pretty much anybody on campus, with these practices. So feel free to ask me for help. Jimmy Williams in FITSE also knows a lot about accessibility. Jan has learned a lot about accessibility. She's our other D2L admin. Ask for help. And then what you're doing right now, you're becoming sensitive to the ways that you can address universal design. Just becoming more knowledgeable. And then I mentioned that mtsu.edu/FITC. Go on that website and look at Word documents. What are the general things that I need to be thinking about when creating Word documents? When you look at that website, use that knowledge, use those bulleted numbered walkthroughs to try out some basic accessibility, because I talked about accessibility is a wide thing, but there are some basic best practices, and that's what that FITC website lays out, those basic practices. And then the last point here is move forward. And that implies I'm not asking you to take 20 years of instructional materials and make them fully accessible right now. What we're really asking you as a university is to take the practices when you're designing something and align them more with what you're seeing this morning. Look at that FITSE website and start using those walkthroughs of step 1, do this. If I'm including an image in my document, whatever you know how to do, use that information from now on. So again, I'm not asking you to retrofit all your documents. I will say, if you're going to use a document from 10 years ago, you can use that FITSE website to kind of fix up some accessibility issues that you might not have even known about in the past. And then again, if you don't know how to do any of that, talk to me in person.
I think I
Go ahead.
asked you this question once in passing, but I'm sitting here thinking about, the in teaching of history and I guess other subjects too, the move has been toward accommodating more visual learning.
Okay.
So I use lots of images, and a key part of my instruction is asking students to read the images, to understand the symbolism. How do you adapt? I don't want to deprive the majority of students of that skill.
Yeah.
But how would you adapt if I'm already describing the visual image as incorporating that into my presentation,
Yes.
then I completely throw out the window any possibility of requiring the students to do their own interpretation. So how do I present visual material that I want the students to interpret, but still make it accessible to students with visual impairments? Yeah,
that is one of the more tricky, maybe most tricky objectives that faculty have asked me since I started this job. Like astronomy. How do I give an astronomy quiz where they have to locate something in a picture and then tell how far it is from something else?
How do you teach art history where you're presenting thousands of slides a semester?
Yeah. Yeah, I will admit that it's not easy, but the descriptions that I've talked about for images, that's about all you can do, because if you're the student that can't see and you come to my class, do you expect that I'm just going to say, well, you're really not the right fit for this class?
No.
So,
but I also don't expect to tell the other 34 students you don't get to learn this skill.
No.
Because one of you is a visual impaired.
Yeah, so what I would do if I were the instructor is, are you talking about live presentations or are they downloading them?
Mostly live presentations.
Okay, live presentations, then I would describe the highlights of that image, kind of like you're saying, give everybody just enough information and then have them fill in the gaps. And so if there's something you want them to pick up out of that image, I don't know. I'd have to see a real life example to give you better. Okay.
I mean, I'm not on that.
Okay. That's
I was
interesting.
just thinking about a cartoon that I used from the 1861 called Secession Exploded. And it's full of visual imagery representing the reaction to secession.
Okay.
61.
There's just a lot going on.
And a representation of one of the Union generals and an eagle and these little monsters coming out of the cannon.
Yeah.
It's visually rich and a great tool for teaching students about secession.
Here's an idea.
But it's not the only way to do that.
Yeah.
But many students understand better with visual.
Yeah.
Than those students who can't use the visual.
It's not on this slide. Here's my recommendation, just an idea. Are any of these things possible? The first one is uploading content at least 48 hours before your class meets. And so if you could upload a fully accessible slideshow to where any student really could look through it, but you're not really giving anything away, and then the students with a visual impairment access that text description that tells them, like you said, every little thing that's going on that's important, then that would be an equal access opportunity when they get to class.
Okay. All right. Got it.
Yeah. All right. No, that's good. So let's talk about where do I start in my classroom. First of all, a microphone is wonderful. I would love to have a microphone on me right now, and I've asked M3, our technology providers for the AMX systems, to get us some for in here in the telecom training room, so we're definitely working on that. But I would not have to be straining my voice right now, and you would probably better understand what I'm saying just with the implementation of a microphone. And then if you have students with hearing impairment, the microphone augmentation might be the difference for that person. It's also possible that that person might have hearing aids where they ask you to wear a specific microphone. And so it all depends on the person. But again, what we're talking about is what are the known barriers? And if we can amplify audio, maybe we can get rid of one of those known barriers. We can create content to be more mobile friendly. You all know that students work jobs. They're on the go all the time. So we can't really expect people, you can hope people would sit at home and do their homework, but it might not be practical these days to expect that somebody's going to sit down for 2 hours and work on, let's say, read 4 articles that you've assigned for that week. And so, this is on the next slide also. But just in light of that, can you create MP3s of your documents that you can then share with your students. And there's software that the Disability and Access Center has license for, and they have a campus license to where anybody can use it. But it can create MP3s of your documents.
So it's you have to read it, or the software
It's
reads it?
text-to-speech synthesis.
So it reads it, you aren't
Yeah.
sitting and reading it?
Right. That's the nice thing is
Yeah.
it takes your documents.
Is it reliable? Okay, so here's an example. I'm talking too much, but here's an example of something that happened the week before last
Okay.
in my Tennessee history class. I showed a short video, and it was captioned. I turned the captions on, and the captioning was commercially produced and not very good, and it was like blaringly problematic in a few places.
Are you
Like,
positive that it was commercially
no, I
produced
don't know.
captioning?
It was through Alexander Street Videos, which is one of the library streaming, so it was already captioned.
What was it a
through-
YouTube video or
No,
you got
was
it?
through Alexander Street
Okay.
Digital Service.
So it was like their video
Yeah,
player.
and it had like this very embarrassing point. I don't remember what they were supposed to be saying.
Yeah.
But it said the word "going"
Uh-huh.
instead.
Yeah.
And there were several places where they got a person's name wrong.
Yes.
And I'm like, I don't think there's any way for me to go in and edit these things. So my question is,
Go ahead.
the software that creates MP3s from written documents, is it reliable, or is it going to garble things or insert key mistakes on key information?
Good question. So when we're talking about accessibility, it's actually a good litmus test for is this document going to be accessible to students that use screen reading software, because it does the same thing. It relies on whatever the document presents. So if you can start with Word documents, that's good. If you have to use a PDF that has to be optically character recognized,
Then it's more
that's probably bad.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you want to start with real text, which is a
As
text
opposed to an
document.
image of a text.
Right.
Okay.
Word documents, yeah, rather than images. You are right. Oh,
When we were watching that film, I'm like, I can't believe it just said that.
yeah.
Because it was really bad.
Yeah, and that's something that the campus is dealing with. With procurement, we met yesterday or the day before, and Dean Allen was talking about what do we do? Because they, like you're saying, they host so many videos, but it comes down to the fact that if we are requiring as much accessibility as we can on campus, can we continue to work with vendors that's not their priority?
Got it.
Yep. Go ahead. You were going to... Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'm
So we talked about mobile friendly. One nice thing is that next summer there's going to be a D2L upgrade that, yeah, maybe upgrade in quotation marks.
Upgrade typically means we're going to move everything around and make it harder to use.
Yeah, it might include some of that. But Jimmy and Jan, I'll say that they're planning, they're going to reformat the current D2L interface to where it almost mirrors. So it's going to be a very slow incrementation to where something might move to the left side where it was on the right side. And then in the new interface, it was going to be on the left side, so it's not such a big change. So there is a plan about easing people in. The students hate what? That's hopefully what the new system, it's more mobile friendly. And so that's,
They put an app on their phone?
yes, that is the reason.
And then 2 years from now, it comes up for bid, and they'll ditch D2L and go with a whole different system.
Yeah, it's possible. I'll take that vote of confidence.
Pardon us for sounding pessimistic about
No,
D2L.
I understand. All right, so let's also, when we're thinking about inclusivity, let's break processes down. I know that we're at the university level. This is not high school. And during the UDL conference, there was even a question at one of the sessions that I went to where somebody recounted a professor saying, why would I do these universal design for learning practices if they're not going to be done in the workplace? And then my comment, they asked, well, what would you say to the professor? My comment was, again, are you talking about the format that you're assessing? If you're talking about the format, no, you don't have to vary the format because you're looking for, I need students to do it this way. But if you're looking for knowledge, I can imagine my boss, Barbara Droud, saying, can you research this and get back with me? She doesn't care how I get back with her. She allows flexibility for the way that I get back with her. And so it's just kind of assumed that the workplace is an inflexible thing, but it's not. So when you break down processes, you're making it easier for all of your students to understand what you want. We talked about what is that sticking point in your semester. Can you break that sticking point down to where it becomes, okay, here's where you start. Then you go here, and it starts to become more of that walkthrough that I was talking about. All right, start with digital text. That's just to say that if you're creating captions for videos, transcripts for recorded audio, it's so much easier if you will type out what you're going to say and then make the recording and synchronize that typed up file as your captions. If you're making a transcript for recorded audio, you don't have to synchronize anything. You just upload that file right next to the MP3 or whatever audio format, and you have your transcript ready to go because you made it ahead of time just by typing out what you were going to say. I saw some furrowed brows.
Well, that means that if you were going to make an MP3 of a short lecture, you would have to read your lecture, which is generally considered a no-no.
Yeah. The tablet right here in front of you.
I don't know what that is.
It's just recording this.
Oh, okay.
And then you can upload the videos from it.
Yeah, but what he's talking about, you would still have to be reading from a script in order to
Yes.
caption it.
Yes. And so it's
So
just,
you couldn't do
it's
a
in,
presentation the way he's doing.
Right.
He would have to stand up there and read from a tablet.
yeah, I am going to have to take this video, upload it to YouTube, have it do speech recognition, and then edit that speech recognition, which it's not easy, but I will say that YouTube is getting really good at speech recognition, and so it'll probably take me 45 minutes to correct the captions so that I have a really high quality video. All right. Alternatives we've already talked about with Universal Design for Learning. Do I or can I do this one thing in a few different ways so that people can understand it better? Can I create some videos? Can I create digital documents? Can I create a D2L collaboration area? Last point, can I provide flexibility? And I've already hit this hard enough. Am I looking for knowledge? If I'm looking for knowledge, there are lots of ways to demonstrate knowledge. Or am I looking for them to demonstrate format? If that's the case, it's really just one way. You have to do it this way.
By format, do you mean skills like writing or oral?
No, I mean write me a 5-page paper.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying 5 pages. You can't make me an audio recording of 5 pages.
Right.
I want you to type it. I want paragraphs to look like this. I want the headings to look like this. I want the format to be exactly the way I want it.
Okay.
Yep. All right, so I think we're running out of time. Let me check it. 10:50. Yep, we are. All right, so we're going to go pretty quickly. Can you upload content ahead of time so that students have a better idea when they come to class? I'm sure that everyone's aware of the flipped classroom model, but that's what this is thinking about. Can I give students a heads up? Another thing that you're doing is students that take longer, let's say they have a learning disability or they use screen reading software, you're giving those students extra time to digest the material so that when they get to class, they're just on a better foot. Lecture capture. I think the campus, we have like a miniature Panopto license to do lecture capture, but we're trying to disseminate the lecture capture process. So think about, is lecture capture valuable to my students? It's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Okay, it's just recording.
Recording your lecture, yeah.
Okay.
And I will say that Panopto does speech recognition for its captions, and so we're going to have to look into, if I'm going to record every lecture, what do I do about captions? It's a thought consideration. Can I provide open captions? You've probably heard about closed captions. It's what you can turn on your TV. Open captions are just words at the bottom of the screen, kind of like if you go to see a foreign film, they have subtitles that are just there. You can't turn them off. That's open captions. And really, it's been proven that when you provide captions to all students, that there's better retention because they're reading along as things are spoken. So I feel like captions are great. I turn them on for my kids because I feel like it reinforces their reading learning process. We talked about MP3s. If you're interested in that program, just email me and I'll help you get it set up. Amplified audio, we've talked about microphones. And then online collaboration through D2L, we've hit that too. All right, so now, stepping back, how does this really benefit you? And how does it benefit your students? I've mentioned that it's a federal responsibility, yes. There are lawsuits because people don't do it, yes. But that's not really beneficial. It's kind of like on the side beneficial. But let's think about education in general. We don't all learn things in exactly the same way. And so this graphic at the bottom right shows one size fits all store and then a variety of animals, a snake, turtle, flamingo maybe, elephant. And it's not true. We can't assume that the way that we teach fits everybody perfectly. So that's why we're talking about variety in the way that you present things, variety in assessment. This is the reason, because one size usually, almost always, does not fit all. Another reason that this is beneficial is this cartoon that says, "Could you please shovel the ramp?" It's a student in a wheelchair saying to a custodian, "Can you please shovel the snow off of the ramp?" And the custodian says, "All these other kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through with the stairs, I'll clear the ramp for you." And the student in the wheelchair says, "But if you just shovel the ramp, can we not all use the ramp?" And so that kind of gets at the heart of, how does this benefit everybody? So let me give you some concrete examples of how it benefits everybody. Heading structure. We don't have time for me to show you actual marking up heading structure in a document in a web page. But just know that when you add heading structure to Word documents, it creates an outline that you can go to review, navigation pane, and it creates an outline that all students can use to quickly navigate your document. I've been creating a document that's over 5,000 words right now, and I have that navigation pane open. It's actually in Google Docs. They have the outline view. And I just click whatever section I want to work in, and it moves me automatically to that section. The really nice thing is that if students use screen reading software, the traditional way of bolding things that are paragraph topics, headings, if you bold it, that doesn't add any kind of structure to your document. So essentially, students that use screen reading software were having to go line by line by line by line to figure out where in the document they want to be. If you're visual, you just scan for that paragraph topic and you're like, "Oh, this is the one I want." So when you add actual heading structure, when you use that styles menu at the top of Word, you are adding heading structure to where the student that's using a screen reader can bring up their list of headings and just go straight to the section that they want to read. So that's an example of if you'll create heading structures in your documents, it works for everybody. Links. If you will embed the URL, the address from the address bar, if you will embed that behind some descriptive text, it will help everybody because it helps people understand where's that link going to go. If it just says http:// and a bunch of garbled text, nobody knows where that goes, other than it might link to some MTSU website. So embed your URLs behind descriptive text. It helps everybody. Complicated images. We've talked about that a little bit. But I feel that if you can do it without giving away what you want students to interpret in that image, but if you're just building up their knowledge, if you'll take the time to type out a paragraph, maybe even 2 paragraphs, if it's a really dense image, you'll help all of your students because you can assume that students will look at that complicated image and be able to interpret it the way that you interpret it. Probably not, though. They're not going to pick out all the nuance that you know about. So when you describe it for the student that can't even see the image, every student reads through that description and they're like, oh, I didn't know that that was an important part of this image. Is that making sense? Okay. All right, I think we're at the last slide. Yep. What do you do now? You take what you've seen here and try to apply it as best you know how. You can feel free to meet with me to discuss how this fits your courses because, like Lisa pointed out, it's not cut and dried to where you see this and you're like, oh, I know what to do. There are specific nuances that apply to your courses. And you brought up, are there some things that apply to your courses that might not fit all students? And there are, let's just say, music appreciation classes where you're expected to listen to this piece and respond to it. And that may not be one of those points of flexibility. That's why that accommodation letter is a discussion where you get the letter and you can talk with the student directly, or you can talk with Disability and Access Center with the student, without the student. It becomes a dialogue of, is this really feasible in my class? And then, whoops, I corrected the date on the first slide, not on this one. The follow-up presentation where you all actually get to work on making things more accessible is November 20th. That's a Monday at 2:30 in the afternoon. So if you have any further questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Some contact you to do the MP3 stuff.
Yes. Anything else? After the 20th? Yes. I think 2 more, maybe even 3 more in the spring. Yeah.
And you're available for individual consultation,
Indeed.
even the roadblocks.
Yeah.
We encounter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Just knowing about the website, just knowing about that website is helpful.
Good.
I didn't know that it was there.
Yeah. How do I stop the recording, Scott? Okay.